everybody who was here yesterday and saw me speak. It's nice to see you again. For anyone who's new, I'm Paul. I'm the Business Development Director here in the UK at Engaging Networks. And I'm really pleased to be joined by Maureen, who works as the Experienced Funding Lead at R&ID, and Adam, who works for one of our partners, NDP Studio. And they've been working together over the last year to integrate their new Dynamics 365 CRM system into Engaging Networks. And so they're going to talk to you and share a little bit of their experience about that today. So firstly, what is integration and what are unified platforms? So it's simply using technology to bring together the systems that you have that have different functions so that they work as one in a way that really focuses them on improving your supporters' experience. And a lot of this, I always think, should be looked at from the perspective of your supporter. So always take that supporter-centric view and think about what their experience with your organisation's like. And integrating systems can be incredibly powerful, so they can increase the efficiency in your teams. So I've worked with a lot of database teams that absolutely adore it when you start plugging systems into the CRM because it stops them having to handle all these CSV files that are moved around and take hours to kind of process into a system in all these different formats and structures. It can make your supporters' experience more personal and more powerful, giving your communications greater impact. And it can also break down silos, so you stop having kind of data stored away in a team, and you start using that data across an organisation and developing a single customer view so that you can get more value out of the data that you collect. I think one of the things that pulling platforms together really does is give supporters what they expect in 2023. If you step back and take a look at what people engage with outside of the charity sector, people have certain expectations that have grown and become more sophisticated over the last few years. So they expect organisations to respond appropriately based on the actions that they take with an organisation. And that's not just one action, that's many actions all kind of brought together. And the organisation almost seeing somebody as an individual who has an experience with a business or a charity or an organisation. They expect better personalisation, so communications that feel relevant and personal to them, that take into account their interests and their different actions. And they expect organisations to understand when they want to be communicated with, kind of what time emails should be sent, what channels you approach people in and how you engage them in those channels. And then finally, they want to know about broader organisations. People don't just go and buy a product anymore. They want to know that the product they're buying is created by an organisation that is ethical, that shares their views, and that they're doing more than simply buying a can of Coke or something like that off the shelf. And that's the same with a charity. They want to know about your work. They want to know about the breadth and the depth of what you do. I think one of the most powerful statements that I heard when I was putting together a report on unified platforms was from an organisation, Sense, who we work with. And they said, without a unified platform, your supporter journeys won't be tied together. In today's world, your supporters expect that. You need to do it. And I think that's a really compelling statement by a charity that are really trying to pull together their different systems, different platforms, and really generate a really highly informed supporter view. So I'm going to pass over to Adam now, who's going to talk a little bit about the role NDP Studio have played in integrating the systems at R&ID.
Cool. Hello. Yeah, I mean, thanks, Paul. I think that, is kind of the who, what, when, how. That covers off a lot of it. Really what I was thinking about was the why. You see here, we've kind of gone for the why. In many ways, it could just be one long why sometimes. It's just, why? Come on. What's going on? So, yeah, I think the audience today is a slightly strange one because I feel like I'm preaching to the converted. I'm normally going out and speaking to people in a role that, is predominantly consultancy-based. You go into an organisation and you're really having to make the case as to why integration works. So I just thought today it'd be interesting to kick off with some of the reasoning behind that and, really how we frame the conversation, but also the sorts of places that it leads. Because we've worked within the third sector and the commercial sector, and I think the other kind of element that could be useful is to bring in a couple of examples from there as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a broad one. and I can see there's a 5-minute left card, or even better, just a hook to pull me off if I go on a bit, or Paul, you could just give me a shove that way. So yeah, find the right button. Cool. So the 3 key conversation starters that we normally kick off with, spoiler alert, it's always the first option. But yeah, I think it's tying back into the point of, is your data working together or alone? As an organization, are you working together or alone? We find that kind of that piece where you haven't got a unified model of data or you haven't got unified systems is you've got a relationship where there's a lot of people having one-to-one relationships with bits of data. It's much better to get one coherent view that all of the organization can kind of play into. That's the sort of thing that we've seen within a lot of membership organizations that have pushed diversity in decision-making throughout the entire organization, applying that thinking to database decisions and actually seeing an uplift in performance across the metrics they're looking to make decisions on using the data they've put together, if that makes sense. So it's actually quite a compelling sort of argument when you begin to see how one single view of data as like a corporate asset can then be participated and engaged with everyone across the organization. So NDP is predominantly a technology house, and a lot of the work that we do is kind of tying gnarly systems together. Luckily, with Engaging Networks, we have a really nice kind of API to work with, and also with Microsoft Dynamics. What we were finding was we were getting a lot of common use cases from several different organizations, and the first point was always the integration piece, which has led us to pulling together a consistent product-based approach that allows us to tie the two together. You talk about efficiency, and I think kind of it's one of those things that we've all been told that thing of, well, if you unify everything, it'll be more efficient. We've started to look into it, and it seems to be in the region of a day a week could be saved in a lot of instances across an organization without having stuff shunted about in different spreadsheets or checking against delivery. And that also kind of gives you the peace of mind that you're saving time, but you're also absolutely compliant, and there's not anything going on with people sending emails when they shouldn't, or anything else that could go wrong. So yeah, I think that's kind of the first question that we always tick off. The next one is your data valuable or not? And again, that sounds like a really weird question, but you spend so much time acquiring it and storing it, is it then being explored and kind of being used to the greatest amount? I'm casting around the room, and I'm going to embarrass him now, but I can't see where Ant is. Oh, there he is. Yeah, so actually, he's someone who we've had several conversations to kind of talk about how you could explore data more, and I think there's a lot in that a lot of organizations kind of taking it almost all of the way there, and then just falling short. So, hang on, let me just move on. So I think the other kind of piece with value in data is that often in the commercial sector, there's a very keen sense of how much it costs to acquire each email, and then what the expected lifetime value of that is. And quite often, that's the metric that we're being judged against in terms of delivery there. And then the final kind of like big question is deciding or guessing. And it is a bit like, if you haven't got the data to back up the evidence, have you not just guessed what's going on? So again, the single data view, the single model, or the unified system really gives you an ability to go out and look and see if your gut feels right. You get a clear ROI, you get awareness across the organization, you get to explore data sets in brave new ways, you get to compare between data sets, which is another key element, and you get to check your guesses. So that's kind of where we kick off with a lot of these things. Where does it lead? So being able to link up CRM into Engaging Networks gives you a combination of two really great systems and two big data sets. There's also this, which I'll share later, which is just a wall of options. But essentially, as soon as you start pulling data sets together, you start to be able to look at things in different ways. So all of these are examples that we've either done or are planning to do in the near future. So you've got things like event system into CRM, advocacy system into CRM as well. There's a lot of CRM, I would say. But yeah, you can kind of start to see, website content against email content, and kind of disproportionately which data sets perform better or worse. So this kind of really gives you a sense of exploration. And then finally, I think it's kind of just a few of the points that I think we've really seen. And this is, I think, where there's massive value add, and where we're going to, I think the whole thing will go more, is just looking at, updating. So looking at donor lifetime value and kind of looking at that and seeing what we can predict out of that so we can change what's going on midway during journeys and kind of like during online processes. Looking at member churn prediction to see who's likely to lapse and then targeting them. Looking at high value giving. And then finally looking at micro moments across a longer user journey. So that's again kind of like tracking across a couple of our clients in the health sector, looking at like 200 individual points across a journey in order to see where it can be optimized. So yeah, that is a quick whistle-stop tour of further integration. Yeah. Oh, sorry. And there's my final slide. I felt that was lacking a bit of oomph. So yeah, in conclusion, there's a lot of potential in there, and I think it's really just working out, as you start to pull data together, where you want to put that emphasis and kind of what you want to get out of it. A data model can get the ball rolling a lot quicker than full systems integration sometimes, so see how that goes. We kind of approach a lot of stuff with this charitable heart, commercial head leadership proposition, which I think also kind of makes a lot of sense when you start looking at some of the applications of it. There's a lot of non-sector case studies that can be super useful in just nicking and bringing across. And yeah, I think a lot of the kind of the endpoint of this unified data is kind of moving into machine learning and AI. It's really early days at the moment, but probably only for another week or two, and then it'll be on to the next thing. So yeah, that's kind of the run through. Marie? Yeah, there's someone.
I did have a wild panic that I was expected to present that slide. I've just about got over that. Hi everyone, my name is Maureen. I am the Experienced Funding Lead at RNID, which that job title means nothing to anybody, but I look after events, community, raffle and lottery. And I had the pleasure of working with Paul Hayward back at RNID. And a few weeks into my probation period, he asked me, Maureen, how would you feel about working on our CRM migration project? Obviously, I had to say yes because I wanted a job. And months later, I'm very pleased, Paul, that you asked me to do that. So where we've come from, in case any of you don't know anything about RNID, we are an organisation that does quite a lot. We do campaigning and advocacy, obviously fundraising. We work a lot with volunteers. We have a contact centre that every day are taking emails and phone calls from people that need help about hearing aids and things like that. We also have in-person services. Historically, each of those teams were using very separate databases to store that information. And I'm ashamed to say in some instances, I think they were probably using Excel spreadsheets as well. And so we didn't have a single view on who our supporter was or what our donor base really was. There was no integration between any of them. We kept our database team very, very busy with moving those old CSV files around manually. So you can imagine how much they loved us. Supporter journeys were quite disconnected, depending on who you were or what part of the charity you were coming into. The messaging might be quite separate and might not look very tailored or personalized to you because we didn't have an overview of exactly what you were doing for us. And we didn't have that single customer view that we really wanted and that all charities need. Also, when we launched a new website, we didn't actually have built-in functionality to take donations. So we were already working with Engaging Networks on the campaigning asks, and so we asked them to build that functionality in for us. I'm happy to say that we have moved away from that very odd and difficult way of working. We are in the process of launching Microsoft Dynamics, so we're also working with Ant from Actually Data, who's helping us transform the data over. And we're trying to bring all our systems in to one place, all those spreadsheets and databases, we're migrating all that information into Microsoft Dynamics so that we can get that single customer view. And when we, didn't mean to do that. When we speak to people, we know exactly what it is that they're doing for us. It means that our colleagues in the contact center, when they're taking those calls and they're looking at that customer record, they're able to have a really holistic view of everything that person does for us. So this is just, I'm not going to read it through, but this is a list of some of the tech pieces that we're moving across to. In terms of reporting, we use .digital at the moment to send out our marketing emails, and engaging in networks allows us to do that as well, to build those supporter journeys and to just give a better experience to supporters than they were getting before. And now we're working with NDP Studio and Adam to build that connection between, I'm getting that 5-minute card, so I'm going to go really quickly, to build that seamless bit of tech that allows that data flow to be almost instantaneous, which is of huge benefit to me as a fundraiser and to our database team, because it means that their time is now freed up to deal with our complex data exports, to do some really detailed analysis for us as well. I'm just reading through my notes to pick out the really important parts. So yeah, as a fundraising team, that just means that we've got more time to be really strategic. We're not sort of having to do lots of reports in different places. We're able to focus more in on where we can put our energy to really see that growth that we want. And as Paul's touched on, the most important thing here is our supporter. So with that single supporter view, we are able to have a much richer conversation with our supporters, which obviously can be more tailored, it can be more relevant, and hopefully it builds to longer lasting relationships between us all. And it's just enabling, the systems are almost making the decisions for us. They're giving us that really rich insight that we need and that we were lacking before. I'm very aware that we probably need time for questions. So I will be around. If anybody has any questions, you can come and find me afterwards too. Thank you.
Thank you. So I was very, very quickly going to just mention a few of the client stories where people have integrated their platforms. So I think Refuge, I talked about them yesterday, but they're a very, very powerful example. They worked with Actually Data, who keep getting mentioned during this talk, but they've automated the data flowing through their engaging networks and Razor's Edge NXT systems so that they can really drive that kind of database growth that they've seen. And they're also using Microsoft Power BI and Actually Data's reporting product to kind of help inform their development and their ongoing program. War on Want integrated their Salesforce CRM with engaging networks, and that helped them power kind of their mailing list growth. So they doubled their mailing list over 12 months and pulled that data through that API integration. And then again, Sense, who I mentioned earlier, have again worked with Actually Data to plug engaging networks into Razor's Edge 7, so very old CRM system. And they're also using Power BI to help them kind of make decisions and drive their strategy forward. So it's something we're starting to see increasingly in the charity sector, and it's something that's really, really starting to power charities as they evolve and change. So thank you for listening today. There's some reports that are starting to kind of come out of boxes in the main room. So there is one on integration and unified platforms if you'd like to know more, and there's also one on mobilization following on from my talk yesterday. So thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, please do send them through.
All right. This first question will be for Maureen there. How did you get the internal cultural buy-in to do an integrated approach like this to your data work?
So RNID are a remote working organisation, and we're moving into a digital first kind of strategy. And more so than any charity that I've ever worked at, we really don't work in silos. And so everybody kind of understood the importance of that data being there for everyone, because I think everybody internally knows that it's not about internal fighting about, well, this person came in because they did the London Marathon, I'm only ever going to talk to them about events. But actually, you know, Paul's report talks about digital mobilization. Just because you've done a campaigning action doesn't mean that that's all you're ever going to do. So actually, if you're asked for a £2 donation, likelihood is you're going to be so pumped up that you'll give it. So I think internally, everybody was already bought in. They understood the importance, not only for the donor, but also the communities here that we're here to work for, the people who are deaf, have hearing loss or tinnitus. So it was quite easy, I'm afraid. I can't give any insight onto how navigate those difficult conversations that I know some charities do have.
Well, I think you say it's easy, but it's easy because there is a culture of collaboration
Yeah.
at RN. I mean, that's the hard work is done on the culture side
Yeah.
versus trying to do it on the data side. That's
And I said that to Paul when I started, that I've never worked at a charity where everybody is just really focused on the supporter experience and the communities that we're here to serve. It's not about personal egos or personal budgets and, income streams.
quick follow-up. When's the best time to ask for that £2 donation?
When you've already asked them to do something that
you've
makes
already-
them feel positive.
Exactly.
I've read the report, don't worry.
There you go. It's like, oh, when's the best time to ask somebody for a gift? Right after they've given their first gift. What's the second best time? Right after they've asked for the first gift, right? That's right there.
Yep.
We got a bunch of questions coming in. This is around .digital and continuing to use .digital as a tool, which this actually doesn't come from an Engaging Networks employee. So just wondering the continued use of .digital and how you're using that as a part of your overall tech stack.
I have to say, I'm not necessarily the best person to talk about .digital and the journey that we're taking on that. There are some internal conversations about whether or not we will actually move that across to Dynamics marketing, because that holds the capability to send emails. But we have so many journeys that are built at the moment that we're doing it in an agile way. We're launching the database first, the CRM, and then I think that will be the next step to look at what we're doing with journeys, because obviously that is already automated, how Dynamics talks to Dynamics marketing. So all those email journeys that are then going out, it would be more seamless, but it's a huge amount of work, and our comms team is actually quite small. So we're doing that in a sort of iterative way. Obviously there are ways to still do the data flow, but it will be a little bit more manual.
Well, and that's the better approach, right, is to take the wins where you can get them
Yeah.
and don't be like, oh, but .digital is like, great, we keep using .digital. And let's move the things that we need to move right now and get a lot of those things out of the way so we can move forward with the things that are really important to us in the short term. What organic social scheduling tool do you use in your stack, and do you integrate social analytics into your unified fundraising campaigning report from Aaron?
Why is no one asking Paul and Adam any questions?
And that was directed right at you, according to Slido. So
I don't know. I think, do you know, Paul, what our comms team use? I think
There is a social listening platform.
there is. I don't know where. I know in other charities we've used Hootsuite and Social Sprout, I think they're called. Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know the answer to that. I don't know who asked that, but I can try and find out for you.
Aaron, if you want to follow up later.
Yes,
So-
I can try and find out and let you know.
And then we have about 2 minutes, so I think a question for each of you. Does integration restrict you from being reactive as there are more hurdles to jump? I have an answer to that, or we're all like, we'll all answer that.
So I think it can feel like that sometimes, and it can be quite insurmountable. And sometimes you kind of look at it and you, the full technical implementation thing can be quite huge. Sometimes just creating a quick model that you can put together, get the insights, make the use case, take that business case to senior team, and then get that going is a great way of kind of going about it. But yeah, it's not that bad.
Paul, are there e-versions of your report that you built?
There are. If you come and speak to me after, I can send you one by email. So just look me up. I'll be around all day.
And last question, can anyone expand on the pros and cons of a separate single source of truth against data remaining in and resolving in Engaging Networks and reporting via Power BI?
Could you repeat that, Ben?
Yeah, I keep talking about the same things, I feel like,
Yeah.
right? Single source of truth versus multiple versions of the truth, right? And how do you balance those out?
I think
This is like a real life example of how you all are balancing that out at RNID, I feel like.
I think one of the goals of integrating everything is that you end up with a single source of the truth. When all the systems talk to one another, and when the APIs resolve themselves kind of every 24 hours, you end up just seeing kind of what your organization's version of the truth is, rather than having multiple different reports telling you multiple different things. And I think that's one of the powerful parts of using something like Power BI to surface all of that information. You can get really, really good reports that are updated in real time, that are plugged into your CRM system, and that if Engaging Networks is also plugged into Power BI or your CRM system, you end up with one version of the truth coming through dashboards that, my experience of SLTs is they love a good dashboard. They love to see graphs going the right way coming through. So you end up with those kind of single versions of the truth rather than a whole bunch of them. And whole bunches of versions of the truth make decision making very hard.
Yeah, I think the con is it forces you to collaborate more with your colleagues in different parts of the business that you may traditionally not talk to. And so I think the hardest thing is actually building internal communication flows that can then support what your overall strategic mission objectives are, right? Because if you can't have those internal conversations, if you have an advocacy team and an engagement team and an annual fundraising team and a leadership fundraising team and a major gifts team and a marketing team and a comms team, and they're all kind of doing different things and gathering different data, the supporter doesn't care. Like, they really don't. They don't care that you have different teams, that those different teams have different priorities, right? They just want to engage with you and see the impact that you're doing.
Completely.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap up with that.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Well done.